Prince William has been on an absolute rampage behind the scenes at Windsor. And the story isn't really about the person he just kicked out. It's about everything that person revealed about how this family actually operates when the cameras are off. Freddy Parker Bowles, Camilla's grandson, just got permanently expelled from royal life. And the way it went down says more about William's future reign than any official statement ever could. The part nobody's talking about is that Anne saw the whole thing happen, watched it from a window, and her reaction was basically a silent nod that staff recognized immediately as approval. That's the detail that changes this from family drama into something more like a constitutional reset happening in real time. Before we get into the absolute mess that led to this, if you're into this kind of deep royal analysis, hit subscribe. We're breaking down the stuff that doesn't make the official press releases. Okay, let's get into it. Chapter 1. Who is Freddy Parker Bowles? So Freddy Parker Bowles is gone, not temporarily uninvited, not on a cooling-off period, not welcome back after an apology, permanently removed. And the thing is, William didn't make that decision in the heat of the moment. He made it weeks before anyone else knew, sat on it, let the evidence pile up, and then executed it in a small private sitting room with only 3 people present. No advisors, no staff, no witnesses who could later say he'd lost his temper. Just William, Camilla, and Freddy himself. That level of control is honestly more revealing than if he'd screamed at the kid in front of everyone. This wasn't anger, this was a calculated removal. And the reason it matters goes way beyond one teenager who couldn't keep his mouth shut. Freddy Parker Bowles is Camilla's grandson. His mother is Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles. His father is Harry Lopes, a former model turned businessman. Freddy grew up with access to royal events. He was photographed at weddings, at Christmas services, at family gatherings. But he was never a working royal. He didn't have official duties. He didn't have a title. He was, in the eyes of the institution, a peripheral family member. But according to the sources cited in this story, Freddy didn't see himself that way. He saw himself as someone who deserved more. And that entitlement is what ultimately led to his downfall. Chapter 2. The Warning Signs. Freddy Parker Bowles had been pushing for access he was never given, mocking William's wife behind closed doors, leaking private family details that put the crown at real risk. William watched every single move for months before he said a word. Then he called Freddy into that room. And what came out of William's mouth left everyone who heard about it completely stunned. But let me back up, because the Freddy Parker Bowles situation didn't happen in isolation. William has been systematically dealing with what he sees as liabilities to the institution, and he started with someone much closer to the throne. Andrew. Andrew had been lobbying hard to get his titles back, working every connection he had left, trying to claw his way back into something resembling official life. William was not about to let that happen on his watch. He told his father directly that the family had given Andrew chance after chance already. There were no chances left to give. Certainly not a second set of titles handed back to a man who had never once shown real remorse. The thing that struck staff who witnessed this was how calm William was. He sat there and watched his father sign off on rejecting Andrew's request, refusing to restore a single title, refusing to even leave the door open for future discussion. One aide apparently said, that was the exact moment she understood who William really was underneath the polished public image. He would shut someone out completely, without blinking, without apology, without looking back. So Andrew was handled. Then William's attention turned to Camilla's side of the family. And this is where Freddy Parker Bowles enters the picture. Chapter 3. Camilla's Playbook. Camilla had been quietly pushing for her grandson to get a ceremonial seat at a regimental event, something normally reserved only for working royals. She wanted to give him something real, something official, a foothold inside the family that nobody could ever take away. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, had his own agenda driving this from behind the scenes. Tom Parker Bowles had spent years complaining publicly that he was the Queen's son who got absolutely nothing. Furious that his mother's position had never once translated into anything for him, he told Freddy more than once, half joking but completely serious underneath it, that this family owed them far more than they were ever given. And he said something that, in retrospect, explains everything that happened next. We take everything however it works for us, with force if needed. That was the philosophy. Don't wait to be offered. Demand. Tom Parker Bowles coached his son word for word on how to raise it directly with senior household staff, instead of waiting around to be invited like everyone else had to. That was the first mistake, and it was a massive one. The second Freddy Parker Bowles made that move, his name landed directly on William's radar. William said nothing publicly. He simply assigned an aide to start watching Freddy's every move from that point forward. And Freddy, apparently having no idea he was now being monitored, made it worse almost immediately. Chapter 4. The Interview and the Leak. A few weeks later, Freddy sat down for an interview with a small lifestyle magazine and mentioned a private Windsor family dinner like it was nothing. He called William a bit stiff, said he didn't think he would make a fine king. Tom Parker Bowles had pushed him into doing the interview in the first place, telling him a little visibility never hurt anyone, that it would help Freddy build his own profile outside the family shadow. Tom even helped him rehearse what to say beforehand. William's office flagged that interview within hours. This time, William didn't bother keeping it quiet. He told his private secretary directly that Freddy Parker Bowles was now someone to watch. Official. On record. To William, the actual words didn't matter. What mattered was what they exposed. Freddy Parker Bowles saw this family as something to spend for his own image, not something he owed any protection to. And then it got far worse than a careless interview. Freddy had been telling classmates he knew things about the family he had no business knowing. One of those things was a private medical detail about Charles himself. It reached a parent. That parent mentioned it to a journalist. The journalist brought it straight to the palace press office. Staff spent 2 full days quietly burying that story before it could explode into the open. This was the turning point. Before this, Freddy Parker Bowles had been an image problem. Now he was a security threat. A teenager with loose access to the family's private medical information was not embarrassing anymore. It was dangerous. In William's mind, Freddy had crossed completely from someone to monitor into someone who was now a genuine liability to the crown itself. Chapter 5. The Group Chat. Then came the messages. And this is where everything tipped over completely. Freddy had been bragging to friends in a group chat, calling Windsor basically his second house, joking about getting his friends invited to a polo event, asking palace staff to bend the rules for him because of who his grandmother was. The aide watching him found these messages through palace security channels. They hadn't leaked publicly. Not yet. William read every single line himself, and what he found next made his blood run cold. Tom Parker Bowles had said almost the exact same thing at a dinner a year earlier, joking that the family ought to start charging people for access. Freddy was not even speaking for himself. He was repeating his own father's words back nearly verbatim. That was the exact moment William made his decision. In private. Nobody else knew yet. Not Camilla, not Freddy, nobody. And here's the part that makes this whole situation so much more complicated than it looks on the surface. Camilla was not just aware of everything Freddy was doing. She had been quietly feeding it the entire time. For years, Camilla had pushed Freddy closer to Windsor, closer to belonging, closer to permanent acceptance, because his place inside this family proved something she desperately needed proven. It proved her own decades-long fight for legitimacy had actually worked, that it had survived her, that it had passed down to her own blood and become permanent instead of just personal. When Freddy pushed for that regimental seat, it was Camilla who told him to ask, and never wait to be offered. She told him that was exactly how she had survived inside this family herself. She was handing him her own playbook, the same one she had used to force her way into rooms that never wanted her there in the first place. Chapter 6. The Catherine Insult. Then the worst possible thing happened. Freddy Parker Bowles was overheard mocking Catherine in front of a group of friends. Someone recorded it on their phone without him knowing. Freddy said she was playing dress-up as a future queen, that she would never really be one of them, no matter how good she was at smiling for cameras. He went even further than that. He mimicked her voice directly, calling her coached, calling her hollow, saying she was all polish and absolutely nothing underneath. The recording leaked first into a wider group chat. Then it tore beyond that completely. The timing made an already devastating situation even worse. It surfaced just 2 days before a major joint engagement where William and Catherine were set to appear together, presenting exactly the kind of unified image William had spent years carefully constructing. To William, this was no longer about access or clout or careless mistakes. This was a direct attack on his wife, the future queen, the mother of his children, coming from inside his own extended family at the single worst possible moment imaginable. And here is what made Camilla's silence absolutely unforgivable in William's eyes. She had heard about Freddy's comments toward Catherine before they ever leaked to anyone. She said nothing. She did nothing because some buried part of her, a part she had never once said out loud to a living soul, was not entirely unhappy to hear it. She had spent years watching Catherine outshine her completely, watching William's favor shift further and further toward his wife, while her own position quietly faded into the background. Freddy's cruelty said something Camilla had buried deep inside herself for a very long time, something she would never have dared say herself. William's decision had already been made privately days before that recording ever surfaced. But the moment it did, everything changed. This stopped being about protecting an institution. It became personal, deeply personal. Freddy Parker Bowles was a liability, and now, in William's eyes, he was a traitor too. Chapter 7. The Freeze-Out. So the freeze-out began, and it was systematic. The first cut came quietly. Freddy's name was removed from the guest list for a private Windsor garden reception. No announcement. No warning. Nothing. He didn't even find out from the palace. He found out from a relative who happened to see the final list and noticed his name wasn't on it. Nobody from the household ever called to explain why. Then came the second cut. An invitation had already been sent out for a smaller family gathering. Already confirmed. Already on Freddy's calendar. 2 days later, a short note arrived from a private secretary. The event had been rescaled, the note said, and Freddy's attendance would no longer be required. The gathering went ahead exactly as planned, just without him. Staff were told, with no explanation given, to remove Freddy from the family communication thread used to coordinate Windsor weekend stays. He didn't even get a notice for that one. He found out he'd been cut off when he tried to RSVP to something and discovered he no longer had access to it at all. Freddy called his mother confused, asking if he'd done something wrong. She didn't have an answer for him. That silence frightened him more than any answer could have. So he called his father next. Tom Parker Bowles picked up and didn't sound surprised at all. "I told you," he said. "That's what they do." Freddy asked him what he meant. Tom's voice hardened. "You need to fight. Don't let them stone you to the ground." Freddy asked him straight out. "What should I do?" Tom Parker Bowles didn't hesitate. "What men do." Freddy sat with that for a long moment after the call ended. He didn't fully understand what his father meant. Not exactly. But something in his chest had already decided. He was not going to let this happen to him without a fight. Chapter 8. The Final Breach. So Freddy showed up anyway. He went to a Windsor Park charity walk the family was attending, uninvited, and stood at the edge of the crowd watching. William saw him, and something in his face went still and cold. This was the moment William knew for certain. Freddy Parker Bowles was the black sheep now, and he would need to be taught a lesson he would not forget. But not here. Not yet. William had already marked him, and that was enough for today. Freddy noticed something worse than William's silence. Nobody would even look at him. Not one person from the family came over. Not one staff member acknowledged him standing there. Even Camilla, his own grandmother, kept her eyes fixed somewhere else. Anywhere else. Refusing to meet his gaze even once. The shame of it hit him harder than anything William could have said out loud. He couldn't stand there a second longer. He turned and fled before the event even ended, his father's words still ringing in his head. He sent a furious text to a friend that night. "Tell me what exactly did I do? Because no one will say it to my face." Nobody ever answered him directly. Not one person. Freddy's mother tried everything she had left. In the weeks leading up to what came next, she attempted twice to arrange a private conversation between Freddy and William directly. She hoped a real apology face-to-face might still smooth things over before it went any further. Both requests were declined. Not by William himself. Always through intermediaries. always at a distance, always someone else delivering the no. Staff who watched this happen read it for exactly what it was. William wasn't avoiding the conversation because he was busy. He was avoiding a moment of mercy he didn't want to risk having, because if he sat across from Freddy Parker Bowles and looked him in the eye, there was a chance, even a small one, that he might soften. William was not willing to take that chance. So the freeze-out continued, cold and silent and total, until there was nothing left for Freddy to be frozen out of. And then came the final cut. The expulsion. Chapter 9. The expulsion. During a family weekend at Windsor, Freddy posted a series of Instagram stories from inside a private area of the estate. One of them showed a blurry shot of a hallway with a security detail visible in the background. The post was deleted in less than a minute, but by then it was too late. It had already been screenshotted and passed around. William's security team did not treat it as a careless teenage mistake. They treated it as a serious operational lapse, a real breach, and it gave William exactly what he needed, a clean reason he could point to if anyone ever asked why Freddy Parker Bowles was suddenly gone. The truth was simpler and colder than that. The decision had already been made privately weeks earlier. This leak didn't cause anything. It just gave William the excuse to move faster. Those close to him said as much quietly after the fact. What came next happened in a small private sitting room, the kind of room used for nothing more than quiet family conversations. That made it worse, not better. It felt domestic, it felt personal. Only 3 people were in that room: William, Camilla, and Freddy Parker Bowles. No advisors, no staff. William wanted it that way. He wanted no one left standing in that room who could later say he had been anything but completely composed. He didn't raise his voice once. He told Freddy flatly that his access to Windsor was finished. His place at family gatherings was finished. Any future involvement in royal life was finished. Effective immediately. He used the word permanently. Then he said the thing that made it personal. He looked Freddy dead in the eye and said, "You don't get to mock my wife and call yourself family." Freddy's voice cracked. He looked past William, straight at his grandmother, and asked her directly if this was her decision too. William didn't give her the chance to answer. He cut in immediately. This decision was made for the family, not by one person. Camilla said nothing. She didn't defend Freddy. She didn't defend herself. Her silence answered the question far louder than any words could have. After Freddy walked out of that room for the last time, Camilla finally spoke quietly just to William. She told him she hoped he understood exactly what he had just done to a boy who never asked to be born into this family's mess. William didn't respond to that either. He simply nodded once. Like her pain was a cost he had already calculated and already accepted as the price of doing what needed to be done. Anne's approval. Freddy Parker Bowles was gone, and somewhere else in the house, someone had already seen more of this than anyone realized. Anne was at Windsor that same weekend, and she saw Freddy leave the estate alone. No staff walked him out. No car was sent for him. Just a regular taxi call from the gatehouse. Like he was nobody. Like he had never belonged there at all. Anne watched the whole thing from a window. She didn't move. She didn't call out. She just watched him go. Days later, at a family engagement, Camilla's name came up in passing conversation. Someone mentioned family matters. Nothing more specific than that. Anne gave a small nod. Almost nothing. Barely a movement at all. But staff who had worked around her long enough recognized it instantly, because they had seen that exact same nod decades earlier when another family member had been quietly pushed out to the edges and never brought back in. That nod meant approval. Everyone who saw it understood that Anne had spent 50 years watching this family nearly fall apart under the weight of people who treated royal access like something owed to them instead of something earned through duty. To her, what happened to Freddy Parker Bowles wasn't cruelty. It was the system finally working the way she always believed it should have worked. She had her own history of giving things up for this institution, choices that cost her closeness with her own family. She never once complained about it publicly. Not one time. So when she watched William make a similar kind of sacrifice, cutting Freddy Parker Bowles loose completely, she didn't see ruthlessness. She saw someone finally understanding what the job actually demanded of him. That night, Anne called William directly. Her voice was different than usual, softer, but firm underneath it. She told him she was proud of him. She told him he had done what needed to be done, and he had done it without flinching. William didn't say much back. He didn't need to. For a moment, the call wasn't about duty or protocol at all. It was just the two of them, family, saying something neither of them said often. People close to the household put it simply afterward. Anne never needed to speak publicly because she had spent decades proving exactly what it took to survive inside this family. It was never about being loved the most. It was about never giving anyone a reason to remove you. Freddy Parker Bowles gave them a reason. And the really striking thing, when you step back and look at the whole picture, is that William isn't just cleaning house for the sake of it. He's drawing a line that will define his entire reign. Access to this family is not a birthright if you're on the periphery. It's not something you can demand because your grandmother married the king. It's conditional, it's earned, and if you treat it like currency to spend for your own image, if you mock the future queen, if you leak private information that puts the institution at risk, you will be removed. Not quietly sidelined, not gently discouraged, permanently expelled, with no path back. Freddy Parker Bowles is the example now. And the fact that Anne, the hardest working member of that entire family, the one who never complains and never falters, and never gives anyone a reason to question her place. The fact that she watched that taxi drive away and gave a nod of approval, that tells you everything you need to know about where this family is heading. William has her backing. He has her respect. And he just showed everyone, including his own father, including Camilla, including every distant relative who might be getting ideas about royal access, that he will not hesitate to cut anyone loose who threatens what he's protecting. Freddy Parker Bowles gave them a reason. And from that night on, one thing was certain. They would never let anyone mess with this family again. If you got something out of this one, hit that like button and subscribe. We track the behind-the-scenes moves so you don't have to. Drop a comment below. Do you think William was right to expel Freddy? Or was this too harsh? Let me know. Until next time, stay informed.